Oh boy.
Hey, if you got this part of the video, you've got the live unedited edition. Home Gadget Geeks Thursday night. It's the 20th of August, 2020, the year that just keeps giving. And we are not really. We're glad that you are here tonight to be a part of it. If you're joining us for the very first time, or you're catching us on YouTube for the first time, we are a long play podcast, and it's going to take us a while to get to the point. So fast forward a little bit, or hang around, open a beer, enjoy the time. We're just going to take our time about what we do here. And so I appreciate you not putting that comment in the comments below. Get to the point. I hate that. I hate you for saying that. So anyways, we appreciate you coming out. If you are a regular and we want you to check in the chat room, Ken, Brian, Mark, checking in as well. Thanks for doing that. We'll get started here in just a few minutes, kind of gather the troops. Mike, you were saying earlier, you still drinking that Leinenkugel's? Have you got a full summer shandy?
Last one probably I'm going to drink all year.
I'm doing Bud Light Lime, which is just water flavored lime.
It's pretty good though.
It is pretty good, guys. Bob, you got a beverage there?
I'm drinking a Monster.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah, that's appropriate.
Yeah, that's
trying to stay awake.
That's appropriate. Ryan, what about you? You got a drink?
Just water tonight. Sorry.
So Bud Light is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Or Coors. Okay.
Yeah.
Natty Light.
That's fine. It's I was talking to Mike earlier in the pre-show, and we're talking. It's Oktoberfest time. Do you guys, Ryan, Bob, either of you, do you get into the fall beers of pumpkin and Oktoberfest?
I used to when I used to like go out there. You know, you'd always, because they put the cinnamon around the ring, and it was good. But I'm not really a beer person, so I don't really get into beers all that much.
Not that much.
Yeah, I've become less and less of a beer person as I've just aged a little, and so I just go for the mixed drinks, right?
Oh, wait a minute. There's never been a better time in history to drink beer. Literally.
Probably, yeah.
There are more options. There are better options. There are more tasty options. And you guys both quit beer.
God. I wouldn't quit. The last beer I had was a summer shandy.
Okay.
I had some Porch Rocker.
Oh,
Sandwich was Porch Rocker just last week. So
I can't find it here anymore. Like that quickly became my favorite for the summer. So Mike, you got anything to weigh in on?
We went down to the lake this past week, and it was so with my wife's family, and me and her brother and her dad. So it was just Bud Light seltzers all weekend. We probably went through like 60 or 70 Bud Light seltzers. It was great. Those things are awesome.
Any of the Bud Light seltzer. I mean, I've had the Trulies and the White Claws, but
the problem is with seltzers, you got to be so careful because they're water, and you just drink them like they're water. And especially if you're outside at a lake and it's hot, and you don't realize, like, oh shoot, each of those has more beer or more alcohol than a normal beer. So it's you got to be careful.
You can start stacking them.
Yeah, you can start stacking them real quick.
Get to that wizard staff pretty fast.
That wizard staff. Yes, you can. I haven't heard that in college. That's great.
Yeah, that's in the Marines. I have a Marines son, and they of course the Marines do wizard staff pretty regularly. So we hear about that all the time. Yeah, it's with fall coming, I am looking forward to some fall kind of cooler weather, and we've kind of been experimenting around with some new bourbons, and so that's been kind of fun to try some of those out. And so I'm ready for the fall. I don't know about you guys. I got a hoodie on tonight. It's cold down here, so I threw my hoodie on. But I'm ready for fall.
Oh yeah, I love the cool weather.
Yeah,
I'm not. I love summer, but I do like fall, at least here, because we get the leaves. Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Yeah, so we get the leaves changing, and you drive through like the countryside. And it's absolutely beautiful. But then it gets to winter, and then it's like a barren Iceland, and I just don't want to be here.
Pennsylvania's kind of
yeah.
Fall to me just means football, and without college football this year, there's a piece of me that's missing. I don't know what I'm gonna do. And if NFL changes, that's going to be rough too. Hopefully, I mean, there's so many players opting out though that who knows what's going to be.
Has the pandemic changed anything? We haven't talked to you guys since pre-pandemic. Has that changed anything in your lives, or is things still pretty much the same?
I've been pretty fortunate that no, we haven't had too much. I mean, school year's obviously coming up. We have a preschooler and what'll be a first grader, so just kind of amping up for what that looks like. But as far as my wife and I and just day-to-day stuff, a little bit's changed, but I've been going into the office 95% of the time.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And are the kids in school or is it at home? Is it remote?
We've opted to do in school on location.
They're letting them.
I think Wednesdays though he'll be home. The older one will be home and do remote school on Wednesdays.
Okay.
And she just does half days in the afternoon. So
yeah, we're split up here. Like Elkhorn District where I live, they're in person. But like Omaha, all remote for the first quarter, I think, Jim, if not more. So all the districts are kind of split, which is weird for a small city like Omaha. You'd think thid all be pretty unified, but no,
not the school districts. They battle.
Ours are all different.
Yeah, they battle each other. Bob, I've been following you on Twitter. You've gotten out to do some things.
Yeah. Well, my girlfriend and I, long story short, she was supposed to go across the country for training for her new job, but because of everything, she's been stuck here. And then we ended up moving. So I don't know, you guys, since last time, it's a little different in here.
Okay.
So we moved during a global pandemic, which was a little interesting thing. And then, since obviously you can't go to restaurants and things like that, we love to be outdoors. And she's going to be leaving, so trying to spend as much time with her as possible before she goes away for 6 months. So
yeah. Wow. Yeah.
6 months.
I've seen some nice venues and some good food, and you guys are enjoying those moments together. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Good for you. Yeah, good for you. I think there's some real opportunities, just to rethink our patterns and the things that we do. And I've actually kind of enjoyed the break from what life had become of just insane 24/7 entertaining ourselves to death by going. And I've kind of enjoyed the slowdown of, grilling more often, smoking more often, meat that is, and maybe cigars. And just like the time with the family and sitting on the deck and kind of just slowing down. It's that part's been kind of nice. I found some new things that I was like, maybe I don't want to go back to the full pre-pandemic crazy. Now we got to get our economy rolling. So there's some things we need to do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I tell you what, one of the things, I got to get outside more. This lately it's been so hot, right? I'm just like, so I am looking forward to fall so I can get my walking and outdoor stuff. My butt has been glued to this chair for days. I don't know if I've gotten up today. I mean, it's just,
oh man.
Yeah. I literally started at 7:00 this morning. I had an 8:00 call. So I got down here at 7. I had dinner. I went upstairs and had dinner with my wife, but I've kind of been in this chair all day. So I definitely need to move around more.
I told Hannah the same thing because I was like, why are every day when I'm here, I'm dog tired at 3. I could literally take an hour nap at 3. But when we're on vacation, I was fine. Yeah. And she's like, it's because we were out and about moving. When you're here, you're just sitting in that seat working the whole time and you're not getting up. You're not seeing sunlight.
Yeah.
Working
vitamin D deficiency.
Yeah. Tonight I just stood I went outside at 5 and stood just in the sun and watered the lawn. I literally just held the water like this so I could get the sun. It's like sun rays. So, all right, let me kick this thing off. I think we're good. Good to see you, Joe, Ron, Mark, Ken, Brian. Good to see you guys out there in the chat. It's all cooling. Well, mostly. Let's say mostly cooling tonight. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that. So hang tight. Here we go. This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks, show number 456, recorded on August 20th, 2020. Here on Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Carlson, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios. And here, Mike, I think fall is on its way. I went out this morning. It was 59 or something. You could kind of feel it. They're totally going to fake us out, right?
It is. It's cool mornings, but it's still 90 during the day. But the mornings are tricking us into feeling like fall again, which I think you and I both like that season.
I think, Bob, you're in Pittsburgh, right? And so you got to be feeling some fall weather on its way, right? Yeah. Have you felt a little coolness?
Right in the morning when we go out and walk the dog, it's a little cooler, but I'm still in shorts and a t-shirt.
Yeah, right on. I'm not saying it's winter. it just, you can kind of start feeling it's coming. Ryan, you're screwed where you're at. You got another 2 months before.
It was nice this morning. I opened the garage door and like it was like low to mid 60s. It was like nice and crisp. Yeah. Super cool. But of course, there's spots in the yard where I know it's just getting beat down by the sun, you know, and I'm just giving up. I heard you saying one time, if it's gone brown, just leave it, let it go dormant. So that's my plan now. So.
Good. Yeah, it's hard to do that because
it is tough.
So want to fix that, but you're never going to recover it. Like you just need to let that thing go in the winter. Speaking of that, next week, Dave McCabe back on, and we will do our fall lawn part 3 of the lawn series here for 2020. So Dave's coming back on. So if you want to join us live, head out to theaverageguy.tv. That's always 8 p.m. Central at theaverageguy.tv/live. Of course, we'll take this show. We got a bunch of show notes, so we'll post that out at theaverageguy.tv and then /HGG456 last week with Kevin. I really struggled with that number, and I don't know why, but I did. And so there it is. Of course, you can join us on our app as well, homegadgetgeeks.com. The best way to stream it if you're on the road or traveling, if we ever get to do that again, download the app. It's free, Android, iPhone. You can stream the show live, in a great way to do it as well. Well, I already introduced them, but Bob and Ryan are back. thinkcomputers.org. If you have not started listening to their podcasts from the last time they were here, and you guys do a live show on Wednesday nights as well. So very similar to what we here do at Home Gadget Geeks. Folks can come out, join you live, chat room, right? Folks can chime in, some of those kinds of things as well, right? What have you guys, Bob, what have you guys been talking about? What's kind of hot on the radar right now? If somebody hadn't listened to the show, what would they come from?
The big thing right now is we're getting ready for a graphics card launch. So we don't know, but NVIDIA kind of teased their upcoming graphics cards, which of course powers all of these awesome gaming machines that we talk about. So everybody's kind of in the rumor mill talking about what these next series of cards are going to be, how expensive they're going to be. That's kind of really what's going on as far as news wise. And then as far as reviews, I mean, we've been taking a look at everything that Ryan's been doing. What's the last that you did? Those key lights,
the key lights on my last. Yep.
And he did some streaming stuff. I've been doing keyboards, motherboards, all kinds of different stuff. So keep him busy.
If you guys could review one thing that you're currently not reviewing, what would you review? Like, are there things you don't have access to?
I think we get offered some things that we just don't take because they're not our normal wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, maybe smart home stuff we don't really do. I know, a couple years back we did some lights. Bob, you did some lights and maybe some smart speaker type stuff. I could see us maybe getting into that, but we're pretty busy as we are.
Yeah. I would love to review cameras because I'm a camera guy. But that's I don't know enough. I wouldn't know enough about it to really, cameras or drones or like that kind of stuff I'd love to do, but that's just stuff I'll buy on my own and tinker around with when I can.
You got to get into the electric car market. Get Elon Musk on the phone. Say, hey, we'll review your Teslas. We'll review all those. Audi, send us your new electric car.
Yeah.
I wonder how many podcasters they get that try to do that. Like, you have a review, a Tesla for review. Yeah. Well, for me, that's why I kind of did what I did with Home Gadget Geeks, is so I could have the experts on, because I didn't want to be the experts in any of that stuff, but I certainly wanted to talk about it. And so it gave me a great opportunity. I'd like to have you guys on tonight. We're talking about cooling and kind of why it's important. Let me be real clear on this. Like, the last time I really thought about cooling a computer, the computers came with fans, and that's all you did. You just turned them on. Like I missed the whole liquid cooling. Now the cooling with lights, the kind of all the cool stuff that over the last decade, probably, I just haven't. And for whatever reason, I bought computers that didn't need it, or no, I guess they didn't, because they've gotten along just fine without it. As I've been listening to you guys, and as we've been talking about this, it's got me kind of thinking, like, in fact, at one point, I'm so ignorant on fans. I had to send Ryan a note. I'm like, hey, my case fan is making a lot of noise. What do I buy? Right. And he gave me some recommendations. We've talked about that here on the show. But Ryan, this is kind of your space. Why? I mean, does everybody have to worry about this? If I buy a computer, do I have to worry about the cooling, or is it just a nice to have? Talk about
I think we're kind of in two groups here, right? The enthusiast gamer, do-it-yourself build type of person, and that ThinkComputers, we focus on. We're definitely going to be interested in fans and how many and their placement and all the things like that. But with someone that's just going out and buying an available part or PC off of the shelves at Best Buy, or ordering something from HP or Dell, whatever the case may be, when you're getting it from them, they've already designed that chassis and the thermals for that to set it and forget it, right? They're going to typically have maybe a fan in the front, one in the back, and they've designed their heat sinks and the power draw of all the components to just be as quiet as possible, as efficient as possible, and without overheating, right? And that's the main thing we kind of want to focus on with cooling. Why is it important? Well, we don't want to overheat our components. We want to get a little more life out of them by keeping them cool and not overrunning them. And then if we really want to get into additional performance, additional cooling is required in order to do things like overclocking, right? Things get hotter when you throw more voltage to them and you're trying to run them faster. So that's when things like, improved heat sinks, aftermarket coolers, better fans, depending on, if you're liquid cooling or doing just air cooling, there's all sorts of fan blade designs and types of flow that come into that. So that's kind of the main reason it's important, right? Not so much on the store-bought, shelf-bought products, but when you're building them and choosing components for a build, that's when it really starts to become important.
Bob, would you add anything to that?
No, I mean, he pretty much covered that. As when you buy something off the shelf, it's designed with cool, to cool whatever you're buying. It's designed for that. Now, if you're building your own, you obviously have to think about cooling, because you're going to be the one who's installing the fans in the case. You're the one who's going to be picking the different parts. So you kind of need to have at least a general understanding. You can't just put the parts in with no fans and then expect the best performance, because you're more than likely going to overheat if you do that.
Mike, go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead. No,
I was going to ask you, are you in a situation today, like, what do you have that needs fans and what do you have that doesn't?
Well, it's funny. So you guys know my story. I've shared it a million times on here of going from, the iMac that sits right there, that's now just a ham radio computer, to a small, junky, quote, gaming rig that I try to go. And then now I just, got all new parts and put it into a new chassis. But for me, what got me was the noise level. So this thing sits right here. I like to, it's got a nice tempered glass thing. I like to look into it, like to see right here. But the stuff I had in there before, the stock stuff, had to spin up so fast when I was playing my big games. It was really loud. And so I actually, reached out to Ryan too. And I said, what should I go with? I've never thought about cooling. So this machine a few months ago was the first time I'd ever thought about any cooling that wasn't just the stock cooling that came with the computer. And we ended up going with the AIO route and went with a Alpha Cool Icebear cooler. And it's been amazing. I was shocked. Number one, the difference between the stock cooler and this cooler in terms of temperature. That was just really cool to see, right? So when I'm playing Call of Duty, which maybe isn't the most taxing, but I think it's a pretty taxing game. It's the most taxing game I play on here. And I play it. The computer is still dead silent. Doesn't make any sound. I got different front fans for the front. So it's got front intake. It's got the AIO for the CPU, and then with obviously the rad up top. And that thing doesn't make noise. I can't tell the difference between when I'm idle and when it's full throttle. It's just super, super quiet, which made all the difference for me. So, but I don't think, Jim, if it wasn't for sound, I don't know if I ever would have thought about it. Because, well, maybe I would have if I would have started noticing bad performance on temperature, but I wasn't monitoring temperature. I rarely ever did that unless I have a problem, right? I'm not looking at it. But now it's like a competitive thing with myself. Like I am constantly now. I have the temperature up in the corner. I'm watching it. What does it do when I play Flight Simulator? Well, what does it do when I play Call of Duty? Right? What's causing the CPU stuff? And knowing that this thing. What's that test that everyone burns out their CPU on? Prime 95 or something like that? Prime 95,
yeah.
Prime 95. So I ran Prime 95 on this thing for a long time, probably longer than I should have. And this cooler kept it super cool. It was awesome. Well, great to watch, below the average of what I saw, even for this cooler. So once you get into it, it's like a slippery slope, because then it's almost like competitive with yourself of how cool can I get this and how quiet can I go?
The community talked me into buying like a Dell 3050, which is one of those little mini puck, right? And I installed the SSD in it. And I actually thought at one point it was fanless. And the other day I was running My Radar, which is an application I use all the time for weather. And it sucks down a lot of data. We were talking in pre-show about flight simulator data. It's constantly upgrading it, the maps in there and stuff. that thing actually kicked on a fan I didn't even know existed in there. Like I heard the fan come out. I'm like, where is that fan? Oh my gosh, this little thing has a fan in it. So, it's surprising kind of where and how they hide them. Ryan, when we think about, so you're doing a build, and I think the very first thing we start with is a case. Right. And like, I used to look at cases for how cool they looked. Like that's what I was looking for. But now there's some thermals in that. So as we think about, okay, I'm buying a case, I know I'm going to have higher end, I know I'm going to overclock it, I know there needs to be some cooling considerations. As we look at cases, what kind of things do we need to look for?
Yeah, so number one, I think, is to start off the number and size of fans, right? So, and you're right. How the case looks is also very important to a lot of people, and some people will sacrifice performance and thermals just to get the look that they want, right? They don't care if it's running hot or making noise. They want it to look a certain way. The case that I'm using, for example, goes against a lot of the good thermal practices, right? It's a solid aluminum front. There is no intake at the front. Glass panels aren't great for getting heat out of the case either. So we've got to kind of think about, what does my front intake look like? Mike mentioned he's got a couple case fans up front. So those are going to pull in cool air from the outside. They're going to path through the system. It's going to go past his GPU and his CPU. In his case, he's got the liquid cooler, but if you've got a standard tower or normal heat sink in there, it's going to pick up some of that heat and then exhaust it out the back fan, maybe the power supply, maybe some fans up top. So really, for intake type of things, we're going to typically have 2 or 3 fans up front, maybe some on the bottom of the case, and then you'll typically have a couple towards the top and one at the back. Now, those can be anywhere from our standard fan sizes right now are about 120 millimeters to 140 millimeters. Used to mostly see the 80 millimeter fans. Every now and then we'd get some 92, but then, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, I think 120 millimeter really became the de facto standard, and it's kind of stayed that way for most of the time. You can also get up to 200 millimeter fans, and those suckers are huge. The nice thing about those is they spin really slow most of the time, but they still move a good amount of air. So they're super quiet, but they're still very efficient. So, and then in addition to just those fan mounts, we want to think about airflow restrictions. So what kind of material are we trying to pull air through? What does our ventilation look like at the front? Is it a mesh material that's going to filter out some dust at the same time? Is it just some holes in the front? Is it some slats that let air from the sides and then the air kind of goes through the case? Those are all sorts of things that we kind of want to look at to say, hey, is this case going to do well for my build and the components I'm going to put inside of it? Anything you want to add there, Bob, about case design and thermals?
The biggest thing is what is the front panel, how it's designed and what it's made out of. Ryan said mesh. Mesh is typically high airflow. That's what you want for the best cooling. Sadly, a lot of these new cases are all glass front with like a little slats on the side, so you don't get that optimal cooling that you'd want. So the biggest thing is, again, just what the front of the case is made out of, and then look at all the placements of where fans are installed or can be installed and see if that's blocked by anything. Do they have glass at the top as well, where then again, even if you put fans there, they're kind of pointless. So those are the things you really want to look at. And how many fans? We've seen cases that have that come with one fan, which is kind of pointless because if it's intaking, there's no other fan to, of course, exhaust that, the air as well. So yeah, like I said, just mostly it's that front panel because that's going to start your cooling processes as far as intaking cool air.
And that's something I wish I would have focused on when I was building this, obviously, because we talked about, I didn't realize it till after I kind of got all the components in, but I've got the Fractal design. I think it's like a Focus G or something like that. And the top part, so the front's great. It's all mesh, and then it's got like the metal mesh in front of the foam mesh. So, but it's all across the entire front. So airflow is perfect. It pulls in a lot of fresh air, but up top where the rad goes, you have to put the rad with the hoses towards the back because the 3.5 inch drive slots would block the hoses on the front end. Well, what that means though is the hoses stop, they rub against the back fan, so the back fan doesn't even spin. So I don't have any rear exhaust here, and it was a really tight fit up against the motherboard too, up at the top with that rad up top. So it was just, I'm sure there were cases out there that would have fit it a lot better. It works great. And actually, I see no side effects from not having the back fan. I think actually from the front up through the rad, and the rad pushes out the top, works just fine for me. I don't notice any difference. But again, one of those things, if I went back and read the reviews of this case, and they say exactly that. It just, I wasn't looking for anything on cooling. I didn't think I would have to do it, but they say the exact thing with it. If you're going to put the rad up top, you know, you're going to be really confined for space.
Yeah, a lot of times you'll pay a little more for that extra space or the thought out design of, you know, cooling and efficiency. Some cases will even have, if you're going to do a radiator build, they'll have a removable panel up top, so you mount your radiator and fans to it and then drop that back down into the case for ease of installation. There's all sorts of crazy, awesome designs to make things more efficient. Obviously, the price goes up with those typically, but they do make things a lot easier. But yeah, I turn it around here. I've got a bunch of components off to the side here, but kind of talking about fans, this is kind of a standard Corsair 120 millimeter LED fan. It's just a single color LED. It's not RGB or anything, but this is just kind of your standard 120 millimeter fan. But I mentioned a 200 millimeter fan. And this is the nice tan and brown Noctua. So when you hold those up to each other, like, that's the size difference we're talking about between a 120 and a 200. So just to kind of give you an idea of what some people are putting into cases.
So is the benefit there a lot more airflow at a lot lower RPM?
Right. Yeah. This, like on the back here, this is, we'll see if it'll focus in. Let me pull back just a bit. Yeah, it's going to not like it. 800.
You had it right at the end.
Just for a second. 800 RPMs. This one here is a 12 volt fan. So it's only going to spin at 800 RPM, which is pretty slow when it comes to fan speeds, but it's going to, you know, be a lot more quiet and still push a good amount of air through your case or whatever you got this.
Ryan, does the direction matter? Like whether if I pull it from the front and push it through the back, or if I pull it from the back and push it through the front, does that really matter?
So that's where we get into things like positive and negative case pressure. Yeah. So you'll see some people that end up with these cases that are just full of dust. And, you know, and for me, I always typically build and never end up with this problem, but I'm a fan of pulling in cool air from the front or bottom and exhausting hot out the top and back. I mean, we're just working with heat rises, let it do its thing. Right. And let the fans help out to do it. That's my recommendation. I say that, and the case that I have here does not, again, follow those thermal recommendations. It has 3 fans on the bottom for intake, which is okay. But then the front two actually blow air out the front. And I say out the front, they run into a solid aluminum panel, and then the air has to make a 90-degree turn to go out some vents. And then there's a single exhaust at the back. So
it's got those vents kind of, they're there, but they're hidden on the side. Is that?
Yes. Yeah. And only on one side, because it's a solid glass panel on one side and then some kind of hidden on the other. So
the other
not
thing,
ideal, but it works.
The other thing, just like Ryan talked about dust, is that most cases these days, the intakes, at least the intakes on the front, will have a dust filter. Mm-hmm. So if you're doing the air coming in from the back, that back fan is not going to have any type of dust filter. So whatever's going to fit through there is going to fly through and get into your system, which probably wouldn't be the best thing.
You just blow it out, right? Can't you just go in there, blow it out?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could. I've seen pictures of people who haven't done that in a long time.
No, I know. I used to, because, you know, you guys are this way. You're the neighborhood tech guy, right? In the old days with PCs, whenever we did PC. And so they'd bring them over, you know, hey, this doesn't work. And they'd bring them over. And the first thing I do is put them on the driveway, and I get my leaf back, and I would open up I take off every, you know, panel, and then turn on the leaf vac. And oh my God. I mean, it was both disgusting and satisfying to watch all that dust just kind of evacuate onto the driveway. So I don't know about you guys. I see, because we're in the phone era, I'm just seeing less and less PCs from the average consumer standpoint. They're either buying them, they're not breaking as often, or they're not buying them anymore. It's their phones. And I'm not doing the tech support like I used to. So I don't see those computers anymore. And if I do, they're super old, you know, when they're coming in. Somebody's like, hey, I can't get my computer to boot. And it's because the CMOS's battery, because it's 12 years old. You know,
it's like the laptop Bob got the other day to try and fix it. It was running XP or something, right?
It was, my girlfriend's sister had this computer, like, oh, I need it for school. And I was like, okay, like this should be easy. Like, but it was from 2003,
maybe.
Yeah, or something like that. It was really old. I was like, this isn't even worth fixing, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. And I feel like I'm pretty good at computers, and I even told Ryan. He's like, yeah, it's not.
You kind of forget, don't you? You're like, oh, how did we troubleshoot these things? Like, what were the tools that we used?
And it doesn't even have, like, I'm so used to Windows 10, and you just go in you go down and you just go in the search to search for your settings. And I'm like, wait a second, I actually have to go through and find these. And
so long as there is gaming, though, there will be a huge market for these computers. I was shocked. My brother-in-law, who's 22 now, called me yesterday. He is not a tech guy. He's getting better just because I am, and so he's able to do some stuff, but not a tech guy at all. Has always been a console streamer or gamer. And he's like, hey, I think I'm going to build my first gaming PC. Like, how do I even start with this? Like, where do I go? And it's because of Twitch. He watches Twitch, and he actually wants to maybe try streaming. And then he's like, well, I just know it's a lot easier if you play on the same computer. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, it is. And especially if you're just starting out, and he wants to get to that. So, I mean, you see how many people are on Twitch, and I think with gaming especially and young kids, I think gaming computers are taking off more than they ever have before. It's kind of crazy. I mean, it was actually funny side note on the popularity of Twitch and gaming. Tim the Tatman yesterday had this streak going, and he's one of the biggest streamers, and he could not get a win on this silly little game. Yeah. And he had 347,000 people watching him yesterday when he finally got his win.
He did get a win.
He got it. Yeah,
I've been following that. Yeah, that's nice.
So he got it yesterday. 347,000. I mean, that's a city, and I think it broke some records. Broke some of his personal records. He usually averages around 30 or 40,000. So 347,000 just shows you the popularity of online gaming. It's just crazy.
Mike, if you're gonna, so you need to tell him first thing. If he's going to build his own computer, he needs to go over to thinkcomputers.org.
Already did.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's good.
I said, here's your reviews. Cause he was like, he's all into reviews, and he watches, before he buys something, he will watch 20 YouTube videos. I said, dude, I guarantee the computer parts you're gonna be looking for, they have it over here. Just go read the review. I said, and if they don't have it, ask me. And then we'll go from there. I said, but they got everything over there. So I already did. It was the easiest one to recommend.
Nice work. We didn't even set that up. We didn't even set up.
We didn't. I forgot about it. I was like, wait, these are the guys I just told him about last night.
It's always nice.
That's funny.
Ryan, could I retro? Okay, we talked about putting filters in front. If I had a box and it didn't come with a filter, are there retro kits that would allow me to maybe install that on the front or do some things to filter that air before it comes in?
Maybe not a kit. But I'm sure there's some things you could do. A lot of times, so the fan is typically on an OEM PC is either going to be mounted to the inside metal or the exterior. If it's mounted on the interior, a lot of times you can pop that plastic front off and maybe put some mesh in front of the metal grill that's there. That'll kind of do some of that. It's going to reduce the airflow, right? Because that fan was spec'd for whatever ventilation they put in there from the factory, so it will kind of reduce the amount of airflow, but it'll help keep some of that dust out for sure.
Say I have a Cooler Master. I have one of those very popular Cooler Master LAN, that's square.
Yep.
They must have sold 1 million of those things, right? Yeah. That has a really nice front grill. Could I retro something on the front of that?
You could probably figure something out
because it gets pretty dusty. I actually just use the grill as kind of a dust collector. You just go in there from time to time, wipe it off, and it does that nicely for you. So I could, if I'm not currently, is that a good idea to try and capture the dust before it gets into the computer, or is it 6 to 1, half a dozen to the other?
I mean, it kind of depends on your environment, right? As well. I've done so many builds over the last 20 years, and I never end up with a dusty, dirty interior. I don't know if it's because I'm just building them just right, or I keep things clean, whatever the case may be. I'm not a huge proponent of filters. I think they're a nice thing to have, but I don't think they make or break a case by any means.
Okay. Good to know. All right, let's focus a little bit on CPUs, because when we think about, and we'll save GPUs a little bit, because that is an area, like I remember when GPUs were just nothing, and then they put little fans on them, and then they put bigger fans, like the whole world of GPUs exploded. So we'll cover that one next. But when you think about CPU today, I would think with the modern CPU, one, everything has to have some kind of cooling on it, but now you've got a couple kinds of different options. So it's kind of walk me through, if I'm going to cool my CPU, what kind of options do I have besides just regular passive cooling?
Yeah, so I've got quite a plethora of equipment, and it really shows how much tech I hoard and probably should get rid of. But I'm one of those. Hey, I might need that cooler someday. Yeah. Today's that day, right?
For a podcast.
It's for the podcast. Yes, shake your head, Bob. I see all the boxes behind you. So right here is a cooler that a lot of people are probably pretty familiar with. This is the stock Intel heatsink. This one came with my 4790K quad core 8-thread processor.
I have a 4770 Gen 3 from 6 years ago. Same stock cooler.
Yep. Measure
the temperatures for what I'm using it for, just fine.
Yeah, so we have, we'll use this as a pointer, I guess. So we have a copper, it's really going to focus on my face, but see if we can, I had that other camera set perfectly. So we've got like a copper centerpiece here that's going to make contact with our CPU's integrated heat spreader. That's a little metal piece that's on top of the CPU that we put in. So that makes good contact via thermal paste or some sort of pre-applied thermal material. And then it spreads out into a cheaper aluminum heatsink. So, right. So we've got copper, which transfers heat better than the aluminum, but is more expensive than aluminum. So that's why we've got kind of those double materials there. This is a pretty standard cooler. You're not going to get good overclocks out of this, if anything. But it does the job and is pretty quiet. And
for most people who are just using their computer, which isn't a lot of people anymore, but for most people, that stock cooler is going to be fine. For where we're headed, where we're getting a lot more enthusiasts and gamers in here, we're getting kind of serious. So walk through some of those options.
Yeah. So stepping things up a little bit this is a stock cooler from my latest CPU. This is the Wraith, AMD Wraith. Is it the Wraith Spire? I always forget what this one is called.
It's it's not the Spire. I forget what it's called, but it's
Bob will look it up.
Yeah, there we go. So again, we have a copper base. I'm going to get this focused one of these times. Copper base with heat pipes here. So you can see these heat pipes that actually make direct contact with the CPU again. And this is designed to cool my 8-core 16-thread Ryzen 7 3800X CPU. So again, we have the copper base switching over to aluminum heat pipe, or I'm sorry, aluminum fins, but we have the heat pipes that run through there, and we're cooled by about a 92 millimeter fan. So we've stepped up from Intel's stock cooling and AMD's very similar cooling that they used to have. But these heat pipes, allow us to bring the heat away from the CPU a little bit more. The fins help to provide a surface to allow the fan to blow air across them for more efficient cooling.
How much more efficient is a fan like that compared to just the stock fan? Do you know?
Efficiency wise?
Just kind of thinking like, does it give you twice as much? I mean, just throw out you can even make up a number if you want, but
I mean, the fan design between them, the fan itself, the design, those blades are very similar between the two. So I don't know that I'd say it's the fan so much as the heat sink design.
The sink itself. But definitely keeps it cooler. Like, I mean, that's an upgrade.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
And has a higher thermal threshold, right? You're going to be able to get more headroom and cooling out of these.
Get the chip hot. You can get the chip hotter and it'll keep it cooler.
Yeah. Not necessarily get it hotter, but allow it to stay cooler longer.
Got it.
Right. And then we have a really popular cooler here from Cooler Master. If anybody's been in the game for any amount of time in the last 5 years or more, this is the Hyper 212 Evo. As you can see, it's a lot taller. Again, we have the heat pipes, copper heat pipes that make direct contact with the CPU on the bottom, a ton of fins here, and then a nice fan to keep it cool. The really nice thing about this is it's $25, $30. You get it on sale. And it's one of the best air coolers out there. They've been making it forever, and it's the best bang for your buck. If anybody ever asks, like, hey, I just want an improved cooler for air, but I don't want to spend a ton of money, Hyper 212 Evo, done.
Yeah. And it's amazing how much of a difference. So something very similar to that, but I went from a stock cooler in my Unraid box. So in a small 2U, or is it a 4U server chassis? I can't remember. I think it's 4U actually, maybe 2U. Either way, in there I had the stock cooler. It's just an Intel 3770. But when you're using it as a server that's always on, doing a lot of transcoding with Plex, things like that, I upgraded to something very similar to what Ryan just showed, and I cut off 30 degrees from my. I was up in the 130s, and I brought it down, and now it maxes out at 90, 99, 100, 102, 100, maybe 107, but right around there. And I was shocked. Like from a $30 cooler, I think it's the one I bought, and could make that big of a difference, which is going to save my CPU in the long run. especially if you have something that you run a lot.
And then I just want to show this one. This is a older SwiftTech. This was for cooling a Athlon 64. I'm trying to remember the model number, 6400 maybe. But this is a huge copper base. It's really heavy, but it looks like a bunch of screws in there, which is essentially what it is. But all these ridges along each one of these pins just adds more surface area to the cooler. So we would have a fan mounted on the top and blowing down on it. Obviously the 120 is too big. So we'd have like an 80 millimeter probably on this cooler. But just kind of a cool, neat design that
that's engineering. Like that's a real engineering. Like how do we get the most surface area?
Yep.
To dissipate this heat? That's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Bob, did you find anything while you were looking?
The AMD coolers, the Wraith Prism.
Wraith Prism, yeah. It's got RGB lighting in the fan as well as a ring around that you can control. So yeah, we've got things like RGB lighting in coolers now.
And is that the stock one that comes with your CPU?
That is the stock cooler that comes with this.
It's a nice stock cooler.
Ryan, if you want to bring the Cooler Master cooler up real quick.
Yeah.
Just so I can. So if people don't understand exactly how it works, just hold it up. So you see those heat pipes at the bottom. Your heat gets transferred from your CPU, and then the heat goes up into that heatsink stack where it again transfers to the heatsink. Those are all those fins, and then your fan takes that heat and dissipates it out through your case. So typically out through the heatsink and then out through one of your exhaust fans, either on the top or the rear of your case. That's kind of how that works.
Would you want to line that up with the direction of the air in your case? Okay.
Yeah. So if the front of your case is here and you've got fans blowing in this way, we want to continue that air. So then we've got the fan that's spinning, obviously pushing through the heatsink and out the back of the case or the top. And another point to make is these aren't just solid copper rods most of the time on good coolers. They're actually hollow and will have a liquid or gas in there that heats up, turns into a gas, goes up to change forms, right? And then cools to a liquid, drops back down, and just completes that cycle over and over, right?
Makes a cycle. A couple comments from the chat room. Joe says, great cooler, crappy fan. The one I think that he was referring to, the one that you were showing right there. Jim also says, look at that. The one you showed looks like a blooming onion.
Yeah, it does. I'm not going to take a bite, but
yeah. And then Tony says, or my nail gun went crazy. So that's also a possibility. Tony's got that. He says he's got that cooler. I think that you were showing there, right? Yep. So that's kind of the upgrade from just stock cooler. Now we're talking about upgrade. These are still heat sinks that you're not going to be running, you've got some air or some kind of liquid in those pipes, but this is not traditional liquid cooling. No. And this is where it's gone nuts. Like the whole liquid space has just gotten crazy good. And so let's talk a little bit about that.
I'll say one more thing real quick before we move on to that. This is like a tower cooler, and there's more advanced coolers for higher performance where they'll have a second tower next to it and a second fan in between, so we get just extra surface area to cool CPUs. So there's a big Noctua that I know Bob has reviewed. What are some of the others that you've looked at? The Scythe units,
the Scythe Ninja 5,
this dark
the
Be
Corsair,
Quiet,
the Corsair A500. Be Quiet makes one. There's pretty much any major cooling company has a massive, just massive air cooler that's around the $80 to $100 range, which is made for the highest end CPUs out there, basically people for overclocking.
Bob, do you get what you pay for with these fans, or is there a sweet spot in there where
typically if you're going for the high end, $80 to $100, you do get what you pay for. They're all made for a specific thermal limit. So you know what you can push these coolers to. I would say though, just like with what Ryan said, that Hyper 212, any of the Hyper 212s, they're like $20 to $35, and for the performance that you get out of them, how quiet they are, how easy to install they are, that is the kind of what I would recommend to anybody, because it's easy to install one. Because a lot of these bigger coolers just think you have this massive 2-tower cooler, and then you're trying to connect it in there. It's a lot of work. Where the Hyper 212 is decently small, and it doesn't make a whole lot of noise, and does have much better performance than your typical stock cooler.
So for a cooler for the whole unit, if I was in that $30 to $50 range, that's probably kind of the sweet spot for these.
Yeah.
And you can if you're just burning money, you can do that and go higher. But if you're seeing something cheap, if it's a $15 on Amazon, you probably want to avoid it, right?
Yeah. And like I said, I think that the Hyper 212 has just proved itself there's, I think, 5 or 6 different versions or generations of the cooler. They've all had great performance. If you go on Amazon, the reviews are all typically 5-star. It's just the proven cooler in its price range. And I think that price range is very good for what you're getting.
But before we move on and talk about liquid coolers, for box fans, same idea of, in other words, if I'm spending $15 to $25 for a fan, is that kind of the sweet spot for those? And I should avoid the $6 and $7 fans that are kind of out there. Is that right?
Typically, yeah. It all depends on what you're trying to cool. If you're doing just like typical air cooling, if you're doing fans that are going to go on a radiator, there's obviously different prices in there.
Yeah.
If you want RGB, if you want a single
lighting,
color LED, do you want a addressable RGB? Yeah, fans.
How much does RGB add to the price?
Generally.
I guess it depends.
There's a huge range.
Yeah. So typically these days we see, if you want to get a set of 3 RGB fans, 3 120 millimeter RGB fans that come with a controller, so that you can either connect them to software or you can have like a button that will change the different things. Typically, those are around $70 to $110 for 3 fans. Okay. And then there's more advanced ones that like the Corsair ones that are super advanced that I have that have 36 RGB LEDs in each. I think they're 150 for 3 or something like that. So
do they all have their own address? Are they all addressable?
All 36 RGBs in the fan are individually addressable. So you could set them to different colors. You could have each one doing a different effect. It's all through software too. So it's pretty crazy.
Uyghur, you should be impressed that I knew how to say, are they addressable?
Addressable. I was, because if we're talking about RGB, you're not an RGB guy.
No, I'm thinking that's that short woman in the Supreme Court, isn't it? Isn't that? No.
That's RBG. Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. So I don't know what I'm talking about. Let's dive into liquid. Where are we when we think about the different kinds of cooling that's available for us that way? Ryan, where are we at today?
Yeah, so we're a lot further along than we were when people were first getting into it. You would hear crazy stories of, I had a friend that used an old heater core out of some old Jeep or something as a radiator, and these pond pumps that you could get at Home Depot, and tubing with the ratchet style crimp connectors. So like that was way back in the day before companies really started focusing on this market. Now we have these awesome kits like the one that Mike has. It's got, it's all in one, but it can expand via these really nice quick connect, no leak connections. It's got RGB lighting on the fans. They can have controllers to control the speed of the fan or the speed of the pump to circulate the fluid inside. All sorts of just awesome monitoring and integration throughout your whole system. So all-in-ones are kind of what we focus on when we talk about liquid cooling. We have looked at some do-it-yourself component by component kits, and I actually have one that I was really hoping would show up for today, but it's actually going to be here tomorrow that I'm really excited to build for the system here. But I've got a cooler here from Corsair. This is the H115i. Man, there's so many. What is this? H115i RGB Pro XT. So I'm going to hold it up here. Obviously, we have a radiator, right? And this is a 280 millimeter radiator. So what that means is this will fit 2 140 millimeter fans. So that means we have 280 millimeter radiator. They go side by side here, and we obviously have our little mounting holes at the corner. So pretty standard radiator for an all-in-one cooler. We have our permanently attached tubes that go down into a all-in-one pump and cooling block. So again, we see the copper here. Let's pop this protection off here. So we have a copper base and a pump built all into one. So we have a little Corsair logo here, and around here we have some RGB lighting.
Ryan, are those serviceable at all, or is it literally is all in one? You don't want that
all in one, not user serviceable.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no easy way to refill these.
Does the fans push the air through the radiator, or does it draw it through the radiator?
So you have a couple options. This kit comes with the option to obviously this is typically either going to mount at the front of your case, and you would typically have either a fan on either side. Let me actually, I've got a different radiator here to demonstrate this a little better. This one's not attached to anything, but it does have fans on it. So in this current configuration, when these are spinning, they're going to be pushing air through the radiator. That's my recommended setup 99% of the time, is to push air through. And you want to make sure that you have a fan that's designed for higher static pressure, right? Because there's a lot more resistance to push air through the fins of a radiator than just a standard case fan. So a lot of times you'll see fans that are designed with like an SP in their name for static pressure, and some of them are AF for airflow. So that's something you definitely want to take a look at, and all the statistics that are typically available. So that's my recommendation typically, is to push. You could do a push-pull and have a fan on each side, as long as you've got them oriented correctly. Get a little doubling up there. Some people don't like the look of a fan, so they'll put the fan up top and have it pull through. I just think you get a little better performance with push. I wouldn't say that's a guarantee or anything. And people go back and forth on that all the time. The arguments are always there. What's better, push, pull, whatever the case may be. I like to typically either have a radiator up front in the case, pulling in cool air from the outside with the fans and pushing it through the rest of my case, or mounting it at the top and not even introducing that hot air to the case. If it's up top and the only heat is being transferred through those liquid tubes, it's not even having a chance to heat up the rest of the PC, and it's exhausting it straight off the top.
I followed your advice there, and I've been really surprised because so all my CPU heat, it doesn't even touch the case because it's at the top, right? And the the fans in, like you suggested, pushing through the radiator up out the top. And my GPU stays so much cooler that way because all that heat isn't in the case. So my GPU just has the stock fan on it. And even when I'm pinned there, it's the only heat in the case is really coming from the GPU. And it's got fresh air coming from the front right across the GPU. That goes up, and it might be introducing a little more heat to the rad, right? Because if there is a little heat in there from the GPU, it's going to pull that air right across the rad. But it hasn't affected me at all, and it's been great to keep that GPU at a lower temp.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, you pull in that cool air from the outside and push it out through the radiator. Now, if you have a dual setup where you're cooling, maybe a CPU and a GPU, and you have two radiators, right? That heat's just going to stay and cycle out. So no worries there.
I think the hardest part in all this, though, can we just be honest, as a new guy to all this, I was trying to follow Ryan's recommendation. I kept getting my fans installed backwards, and I would go in and all of a sudden one was pushing and one was pulling, and they say, well, look at the sticker. And I didn't know I'm looking at the sticker, but does that mean it's pushing or pulling? That is the hardest part about installing fans, is knowing which way is push and which way is pull. Or maybe I'm just not smart. And that's probably more like it's probably user error, but man, that was difficult.
How do we tell, Ryan? Is there a way to just look at the fan and to know?
Yeah.
I mean besides an arrow, like on
when you know, you just kind of figure it out, right? Yeah. The way the blades go. But a lot of times, this fan doesn't have it, but a lot of the times on the side right here, there'll be an arrow to the direction of the air and the way that the blade should be spinning.
Right. Yeah. I get really angry when I get a fan and I can't, I don't know, I don't know where this thing is doing. And some of them don't give you enough pressure. Like you put your hand in the back and you put your hand in the front, and you kind of have a hard
I take a tissue and I just, if it sucks it to the side, that's my test. Not it doesn't suck it in. I hold it long, and if it goes like this or if it blows it away. Yeah, the tissue test is, I think, the easiest test.
Splash water on it and see where things go from there.
But it's a pain if you get their whole rad installed and you realize you have your fans backwards, which is exactly what I did. Yes. Had the whole in this tiny case I told you guys is not fun to work in, and then everything was backwards.
Especially with you've got to not only power the fans, but if they're RGB, you've got those cables to connect to your controller. So all that lighting. Yeah.
And usually those cables are right up at the top of the motherboard underneath where the rad's going to hit. That's where I was trying to get my fingers up in there. And it's a fun, I had built a lot of computers, but they had all been junker, who cares? Put it all in a box. They're unraid builds, they're things like that. I had never built a pretty PC before. And that's a whole different ballgame when you're having to deal with cable management, fans, all that crazy stuff.
Ryan, because case temperature matters, right? Inside how that it affects everything, right? Is there any are there any solutions, a little off topic and not in the notes, but for cooling for the hard drives? Like, so, we are seeing more, larger spinners, and some people are putting those spinners in units to use them as data drives. Are we addressing those? I mean, I know there's case fans you can put up in front of them and some of those kinds of things, but are there any specific cooling options for drives?
There are. I can't reach it, but I have an older, like the old Western Digital. I'm trying to remember the name of them, but they came in, I think they called it an ice pack. It was like a 2.5-inch drive and a 3.5-inch case, right? And it was just aluminum and would transfer the heat via some heat pads to keep that drive cool for server environments, things like that. Yeah. Bob can talk probably a little more on like current drives, NVMe drives, things like that come with the heat sinks. I can look at them.
I can grab.
That's separate, right? So with the newer drives, like with I've got a 2.5-inch SSD right here, an older one. A lot of times with these drives, they're not going to get hot enough to overwork like the metal body on this. If you open one up, there's typically a thermal pad that makes contact from the chips themselves to the case and just dissipates heat and uses that whatever airflow is available inside the case to keep it cool. Regarding NVMe drives, typically on those, we want the memory chips actually to be a little warm, but we want the controller to stay cooler. So you'll either have a little foil sticker. There's usually a sticker on your NVMe drive, those M.2 drives. A lot of times they'll have a copper sticker there to actually spread some of that heat out. Or you've got that drive, the WD Black SN750, which I have in my PC as well, has a nice little aluminum cooler there that was designed by EK. They're a big water cooling company. They paired up with Western Digital there.
I have this one as well. This is pure copper on this one.
And that's just all passive, right? I mean, you're just trying to dissipate the heat off of the chip.
Yeah. So the thing with the current gen storage, PCI Express storage, is that these controllers will get so hot that they'll actually throttle. So your performance will, typically when you write to the drive, it will be at its top performance, and then you'll see it drop dramatically. It's because the controllers are actually getting too hot. And we've seen that on, especially like Samsung, the first gen of the PCI Express drives had that problem. So you see a lot of motherboards actually come with heat sinks for the M.2 drives.
But I might want to think in this cooling solution, I might want to think about where that drive is and see if I can get some air to pass by it to kind of move some of that heat away, right? Whether it's going to be up underneath the board or it's going to be sitting on top of the board. If I'm not pulling, it just got me thinking, if I'm not pulling the CPU heat away, that may be collecting in a poorly vented case. That may be collecting in the case, and then that the NVMe is gonna get stifled. It's gonna get suffocated, basically. If you're
you see that. I mean, that can be with any components. We see that a lot lately on motherboards with their power delivery components on the motherboard. They'll get so hot where their CPU will throttle as well, just from that. So, yeah, it's just you have to have good airflow throughout the case, pretty much to go across most of your components.
No, it's a really good reminder. I get into this every once in a while. I've got a board that's got some software where you can monitor the temperature, and I throw those up. I just wish that was in Windows, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, why can't that just be a part of the dashboard in Windows? But I'd probably watch it a lot more. I have gotten into the habit, since I'm doing some mining and some other stuff, of just keeping the task manager up so I can kind of see what's going on. I like Mike.
Yep.
I like to monitor that. I don't worry about my CPU temps, but doing this burst coin mining that we've been doing for the last couple of years, I've blown through a couple of drives that I know they died because of heat. And it got me thinking like, oh, I should have probably vented my hard drives a little bit better, because there's a big difference on a hard drive, especially on a spinner. There's a big difference between it running passive and a little bit of air running across it. Just a little bit, right? Keeps it so much cooler from an outside, at least a case temperature perspective. So again, we weren't going to, that wasn't in the notes, but it was kind of got me thinking that's the other performance piece in your case, inside the case, that could go horribly wrong if you don't have some air going across it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And if you want to get into monitoring, Jim, if you want to check out an app called HW Info, that will give you pretty much every sensor that's available on your computer, down to speeds, power,
voltages,
temperatures, everything. And you can have this massive you can have this massive display of everything that you want to see.
Yeah, that's what feeds into Rain Meter, right? I think that's what my rain meter uses is HW Info. Yeah.
When I was starting to lose some of the early drives, and I was just trying to figure out like, hey, how do I get in here and monitor this on a regular basis? I tested a couple, and I think that HW Info was one. And I think that's free. Is that a free app?
Yeah,
you guys know?
That's free.
One we should have added to Schoonover's list of free apps from last week that we were talking on, but that's another good one to throw in there. Okay. From Ryan, you said you didn't have it to show, but when we think about custom, are we really to the point where it's kind of just like snap them in and they're together and fill the thing up and you're good, or is it a little more to it than that?
No, there's a little more to it.
Bob was laughing at that.
So the all-in-ones, right? They're all-in-one for a reason. They've got sort of a reservoir, a pump, a CPU block, the fans, the radiator, the tubes, all of that, right? So if we want to get custom with it, well, now I have to determine a CPU block. So what am I, AMD or Intel, and what sort of platform am I on there? Sometimes the block will work for AMD or Intel. It just kind of depends on the company you're going with. Radiators, right? We can think about thickness and fin density, right? How densely packed are the fins in the radiator? That's going to determine, well, do I need more static pressure on my fans in order to push air through there to cool this properly? Do I want to go soft tubing, or do I want to go hard tubing on the cooling, right? Hard tubing looks really nice and looks really good, but it's a lot harder to do than soft tubing. And then we have to think about fittings. What sort of bends and angles am I going to need to successfully route liquid all the way through all these components? Pump and reservoir. So each of these components takes some time. Some companies that design and offer components offer like little building systems, web pages where you say, oh, here's my components, and they'll kind of build out for you exactly, what components you need to cool it. And they'll say, you need this many fittings and this water block for that motherboard and CPU, and this one for this graphics card. And we know your case takes a 240 or 360 millimeter radiator, and they just set you up, and here's a bundle package for you. Give us money and we'll give you parts. So you can do it a multitude of ways now. So just take some time, and I always recommend asking someone that's familiar with it to kind of look over your components, right? So I ordered up a bunch of components from AlphaCool. Those are the ones that are going to be here tomorrow. And I reached out to our friend Dave at AlphaCool, said, hey, I'm pretty sure that I've got everything lined out for this, but can you take a look at this just to make sure everything's good? And he went through the parts. Yep, everything looks good there, but I'd recommend maybe some different fittings to allow for some flexibility in the future if I ever wanted to change something, right? So definitely something to look out for. There's a great subreddit for liquid cooling. Most of the component manufacturers have a message board or community, a Discord, something like that you can go and get help at as well.
So Ryan, if you had a choice in money, they're close in price, do you go all in one, or would you do custom?
Oh, I would go custom. They're not the same price by any means. No, you will spend so much more on custom, but I would, definitely go custom. That's what I can't wait for tomorrow. I can't wait to get this box.
We'll have to circle back around with you. Bob, what about you? Custom or all in one?
Custom if somebody else does it, because I actually don't do custom water cooling. I would love to learn how. It's just a time constraint. Like right now in my main system, I run an AIO, but AIO is just ease of use. It's It's the water cooling or liquid cooling that you can install and be a total beginner to do. And they work, and you don't have to service them. And most of them have at least a 3-year warranty. So you're pretty much good to go on all of that.
And that's all the nightmares that I heard early when it came to liquid cooling was a pipe, bursting or, coolant all over your parts.
Yeah.
And it kind of early on, it's like, I don't know if I want to, I ruin enough stuff as it is. I don't know if I need to ruin it, with my own cooling.
It's definitely a possibility, more so with putting it together yourself. The all-in-ones, they do a pretty good job of getting them sealed up at the factory.
There's a couple that actually, I think that a company called Deep Cool, they make an AIO that they say it's completely leak proof. Like it will never leak. They guarantee it. But yeah, most of these, you don't hear about that. Like, especially the AIOs, you don't hear about it at all.
I think we've gotten past that, just to be honest, right? Yeah. I think those days are over. But in the early days, it seemed like I was hearing about that a lot. It did kind of keep me away from it because I was just like, I don't know if I want one more thing to have to monitor all the time. And I was hearing stories of it leaking and then ruining a motherboard or ruining a GPU or something like that. That's the last thing you do is want to buy a $1,500 GPU and then have coolant leak, right? Yeah. Leak all over it, right? It's getting expensive now.
Yeah.
Let's talk GPUs really quick because I think this is an area where the acceleration of our GPUs has been ridiculous. Like just if we think in the last 5 years of where we've gone, where we came from, and where we've gone to, and just the price of them as well. And I have two 1060s in my box side by side. By the way, they cool different that way. That the one underneath the other one doesn't do quite as well, right? So I rigged up some cooling underneath it so that it would at least have something moving on it to keep it from overheating. And I've seen some aftermarket cooling options for GPUs. So let me start with this question. I'm getting a GPU today because I want a game, throwing it in a box that I have. Do I have to worry about anything beyond the stock cooler that comes with it at that point, or is that going to be good enough for me?
I think for the most part, it should be good. The thing with especially if you're going to get, say, a non-reference design GPU, that's like, say, one from Asus, Gigabyte, MSI, they make their own custom cooling solution for the graphics card. So they test it. It's typically better than if you got, say, like the NVIDIA Founders Edition card or the stock AMD card. It's going to have better cooling. When you get into aftermarket cooling solutions for GPUs, it's a little tricky because you basically have to disassemble the card that you've already bought, which you can break things that way.
Yeah, they're delicate. You look at them and you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to take a screw out of this thing.
Yeah.
Right? The fans seem a little, they're not, they seem a little more dainty. They seem a little more precision, maybe is the right, probably instead of dainty. That was a bad word, but you know what I mean? Just delicate. And so that is an area, but I've watched YouTube videos of folks modding these and putting coolers on them and running them hard. And I imagine you could do that as well.
Yeah, it's not, I would say it's definitely not as popular to replace the cooler on a GPU or a video card with an aftermarket cooler. For a while, there were companies that were making them where you could get some improved cooling performance and, maybe some noise reduction. But the coolers that come on these that are, 2 and 3 PCI slot thick and just these beefy coolers and back plates, they're going to do a perfect job for everybody. Where you really come into taking these apart is going to that custom liquid cooling design, where you have to take all the screws apart and cut little pieces of thermal transfer material in order to make contact between, your voltage regulators and your chips and everything with the block itself. That's when it really gets complex and complicated. But
have you done that? Ryan, have you done that at all?
I had this is older type stuff back in the day for like GeForce 8800 like GS. So this was, over 10 years ago. Yeah. But I did a review on a Arctic cooler, and it was just this big. You could use it passively. It was as big as the video card, just an array of aluminum fans, similar to some of these coolers that we looked at for a CPU, but they adapted that technology to a GPU. And instead of the cooler making contact with each of the memory modules and things like that, they gave you the little stick-on heat sinks for your memory, right? So then you could strap fans onto these coolers. But I'm really like excited but nervous to tear into my 2070 Super. I mean, it's a $530 card when I bought it. That's a lot. That's the most I've ever paid for a GPU, right? And you go up a level to the 2080 and higher, and you're over $1,000. So I'm excited, but I'm nervous.
That's my biggest thing. That's why I haven't done it. Because I'm just like, I look at my computer and I'm like,
more excited than nervous, though, for sure.
Yeah.
I think I'm more nervous to get the footage right and make sure everything goes smooth with that process. So.
It'd scare me to death. I wouldn't. I know. I'm not going to do it. I'd do a whole bunch of other things. I'd just be afraid to. I'd screw something up. In the process, strip something out. Mike, would you? You got $1,000 GPU? Are you gonna mod it with a cooler?
No, that stuff scares me. Yeah. It's funny. Historically, I've been such a however the manufacturer sent it, keep it that way. And I have, when I got into building computers, I kind of started to get away from that a little bit and really tear stuff up. And especially when even in my regular life, right, like make it useful, right? I'm like, well, it's a machine. It's supposed to do stuff. Make it more useful if you can mod it. But something like that expensive, I couldn't do it.
If you had like a 20 series card, AlphaCool has their newer heat sinks and coolers for those. It'll tie right into that cooler that you've got. So those quick disconnects, it comes with those. You can just expand it. Boom.
That might get me. That might get me. The 1660s, I think the form factor is pretty close. I wonder if I could get it to fit. I don't know.
I don't know about that one.
I don't know if I know.
I'll have to go grab a 2070.
There you go.
Guys, on GPUs, any other thoughts on cooling or, for most people, here's what I hear you saying. For most people, stock cooling is going to be just fine. Make sure your case is ventilated well. It's going to do its job, especially if you can get the CPU heat out of there to begin with. That may be a great way to start it. Otherwise, it's a pretty extreme situation to maybe go beyond stock cooling on a GPU. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, one thing I will mention, and is kind of a trend and kind of goes back and forth, is vertically mounting your GPU. So instead of standard horizontal mounting, where we've got some cases where they'll mount it vertically, right? Sometimes that gets pushed up to the side of the case towards, especially on glass side panel cases. Well, now you're starving those fans for airflow and they don't get as much. So that's something to consider there, right? Some cases aren't designed.
So you get your drill out and you just drill through that glass.
Exactly. Some cases they'll make brackets so you can modify a case that wasn't designed for that to accommodate that. But yeah, again, you're going to be maybe at a different positioning than what would be ideal for a card.
So if you're thinking about a build altogether, and we're thinking, it sounds to me like I really need to kind of, if I want performance, I kind of really need to put all the parts together first. Like, what am I putting them in there? So what's the CPU? What's the GPU? What I'm going to talk about for hard drives. What are their thermal properties? So in other words, how hot do they run? Am I even looking at the specs to be like, what are their max temperature if I'm gaming? Or you probably get some examples. Then you probably want to do, it sounds like to me, you want to spend a bunch of time on the case at that point to say, okay, these parts going in this kind of case because it'll allow for this kind of cooling, or it'll allow for these kinds of fans. Is that kind of, at this point, instead of picking the cool case first and jamming the parts in, is it the other way around?
I think people go in both directions.
Yeah.
Some people that case is like everything to them. And if that's kind of how it was with this case, I love the design. I know it's not the most thermally efficient, but I'm going to deal with those issues.
Bob, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, you will see it. I can't talk about it, but there's going to be companies that are going to release a case and they're going to have 3 different versions, one for water cooling, one for air cooling, and then the one that looks pretty that's all glass. Nice. So you'll see companies have the same case that almost looks the same, but we'll have versions for ones for performance, and you still see it like Fractal Design. They have a case that you can get it with high airflow, or you can get it with like the glass. So, but yeah, it's kind of like, if you like a certain case, you're going to get that case. If that's what you want, you're going to get it. And then you're going to figure out how I can make this cool, like, how I can cool it the best. But typically when I'm doing a system, I look at the case as the first thing. That's, because I want a specific look. I know what I'm going for. And I know that case is going to support all the other hardware that I have.
We had Jay Madison on a couple weeks ago. He, of course, he builds just the smallest. I mean, his specialty is kind of these small builds, right? And that's also another, I mean, the thermal, the temperatures, big considerations into but it's for that, it's almost like, well, we get what's good enough in there. They try to worry about sound and fit and getting the hot air out, but all, and getting performance, but it's kind of that combination. That's kind of what I hear you guys saying. Like, okay, I'm going to go for looks, and then I'm going to figure out the components that give me the best performance, kind of based around the limitations that I have. Where I may the opposite. I may take it and say, I want to get my components. I really don't care. I'm going to ship the case away where nobody's going to see it anyways. I'm going to want max performance. If it's an ugly case, as long as it keeps it cool. So I guess it depends where you want to. I'm also not a light guy. Like I don't put any lights in my, although that's not true. I do have two fans and they do have lights. So it's one white light. so technically they do. But so I guess there's a couple different ways to kind of approach it, just depending what your priorities are.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. Are there any other, when we think about technologies that have come along with cooling, is there anything new or anything else we didn't talk about in here along these lines? Anything you guys want to promote or talk about? Maybe things that are coming up or what? Anything we missed?
I mean, I'll say
they're good.
I'm just going to mention like the cooler that I'm using on my case right now is an all-in-one from NZXT. It's their Kraken Z73. So it's a 360 millimeter cooler, meaning it has a 360 millimeter radiator with 320 millimeter fans. Cool thing about this is on the water block that goes on the CPU with that Corsair we showed, it was just kind of a plastic cover with some RGB LEDs. This one has an LCD. So right now I look over and it's showing me an active temperature graph for my CPU and my GPU, but I can put a Think Computers logo on that screen and have it be animated, and I can do all sorts of crazy cool stuff with it. So I really like that. I think that product is just really neat. It's gimmicky, but it's also useful, right? Because I look over at it all the time to say, hey, what's my CPU and GPU right now?
What's the retail on that, Ryan?
Oh man, I'll find it.
240 or 270?
Yeah. It's a lot higher than the standard all-in-one price.
Yeah. So for me, the one thing that I really like about cooling is that we can do things like this, which I'll bring over here. I think this is 16 liters, and this is a small form factor PC from Corsair. It's called the Corsair One. And what's cool about it is that both the CPU and GPU are liquid cooled with all-in-one coolers, and then there's a single fan at the top. And this small little thing, which is like, again, 16 liters, it's very, very small. It is more powerful than my computer that's sitting next to me. It has the latest components. It has everything, and it's so small. And we've seen, this is a custom built PC, but we have cases from NZXT. They have their H1, which is, I think, 18 liters. It's a little bit bigger than that, but that's one that you could build yourself. And that we have these either liquid cooled, like all-in-ones, or even, certain fans and certain heat sinks that we can put in these very small builds that will keep these components nice and cool. So
that computer reminds me of an actual functioning version of the old trash can Mac Pros that they came out with. Right? Where you're sending all that air right up the center through the one circle fan on the top. But that Mac Pro never took off.
Yeah, this
what's the model on that again, Bob?
This is the Corsair One I think it's the i200.
i200. Yep.
Yeah. So this is the new one that has a 2080 Ti and a 10900K in it.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
but it's a lot of power in that form factor.
This is, I think, $3,500. So it's very. Yeah, it has.
That's why he's holding it with both hands.
It better perform.
It's actually it's very heavy and it's all metal, which is pretty cool. But there's radiators on both sides, so you have radiator here on the GPU side, and then radiator here on the CPU side. So it's like
and no fans on those radiators, right? It's just the single fan up top pulling air through the sides and up and out.
Yeah, but I was really impressed with this. I'm not because I'm a build it my own self kind of guy. I'm not really, I don't like pre-builts, but the one thing I really liked about this is that I couldn't do this myself. I couldn't build something this small and this compact that would actually work like this. And it's technically not that expensive for what it is. We actually tried to go on PC Part Picker and make this, and it was like $400 more expensive for this, and you're not going to get a case that's this small that you could actually do it in either. So it was, like I said, I was just really impressed with it. What they're able to do with liquid cooling in the single fan is actually really impressive. So
yeah, it's engineering, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they've engineered it well, and that's one of those kinds of things where you can do that in that setting. So in this case, if you're going to spend that kind of money, I mean, yeah, it's fun to build it, but it may make more sense just to pick it up. That'd be a great. It's tall. It's not. I mean, it's kind of pretty, but it's kind of not too. You know,
there are RGB fans on the front, so you might.
Well, but that'd be perfect for me because I don't really care.
RGB lights. Right? I mean,
I just want performance out of the thing.
Yeah.
So that would be. Mike, what have you picked up from the last hour we've been chatting? You going to do anything different? Did this sway you in any way to do more of something? I mean. Well, you got a new ham box, so you can't.
Yeah, I can't be spending any money right now. Yeah, that ham radio was not wife approved technically.
I told you, don't.
She's right upstairs. She's right upstairs. She can hear me. Well, it sounds like I need a 20 series card though, so I can do the custom water block that ties into the cooler that I have. The Alpha Cool Ice Bear cooler. That sounds pretty cool.
Wait for maybe next month or two and. For a new GPU release.
There we go. Yeah. No, I like talking about all this stuff because I didn't know anything about it before, and I reached out to Ryan a lot when I was doing it, and the whole pressure in the case, right, direction of fans, things like that makes a big difference, and the dust was a big thing, and I think for first time builders of pretty PCs, like I said, you can be a builder for a long time, but the first time builder, if someone's gonna be seen, all that stuff makes a pretty big difference.
What do you, before we wrap this up, Ryan, I'll start with you. What are you excited about just from a tech gadget perspective, not beyond cooling and the stuff we've talked about? You're also in the gadget world. You live in this. There's a bunch of kind of cool stuff coming out around Christmas time. This is a question I start asking now, the guests starting now till Christmas. What are you looking forward to?
I would say a drone. But I already bought it, so like a couple weeks ago.
All right.
So it would probably be that. Man, I don't know.
Have you been flying it much?
A little bit. I've just been busy with a lot of stuff. I'm going to be flying it a lot more, and then I've got a project coming up that going to use it a lot for that to survey some land and stuff to make videos and just try and do a little more videography and stuff. So I would say video in general, right? Learning to use the equipment that I have better I don't need a fancy new camera. Obviously the drone gets me up in the air, but if I wouldn't have bought it, I'd say that would be.
You've told your family already, no Christmas presents. Right? Oh yeah. Because you're good. You're good.
I'm good.
Okay. Good. Maybe some chocolate and some other
maybe a new lens or something.
Bob, what do you, as you look out over
well, obviously I'm excited for the graphics card launch, but beyond that, I have been looking at drones too. I assume that DJI will be announcing something for holiday. I also need to get a new phone, so I'm an iPhone guy. I know most of you guys aren't iPhone guys, but
I am too.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I have an iPhone X or iPhone 10, whatever you want to call it, that I've had since it came out, and this next generation I will be upgrading. So I'm excited to see what they do. Especially I love taking pictures on my phone because that's what I have. and it's just this camera just seems a little dated now. I still take good pictures on it, but it just seems a little dated.
You and I are in the same exact boat. I'm on the 10, and so I'm probably gonna be upgrading this year. Now it's what, 2.5 years out, and the battery's starting to get a little low and things like that. You know, after 2 years, Apple has that thing and they flip the switch and it turns into a shitty phone.
I haven't noticed that at all on this. There is no reason for me to upgrade. The only reason I want to upgrade is better camera quality, really.
Okay. And that's weird because I've been totally fine with the camera quality. My battery has just been depleting pretty quickly throughout the day. Oh yeah, I'm plugging in at noon because I'm already at 48%. And I don't know what I am on it a lot for work, right? Because I run Teams on it while I'm doing stuff. It's easier just to use my phone for Teams. I mean, I'm using it constantly, but it's still, even if I let it sit there, it's going pretty quick.
There was that one time you dropped it in the lake. I mean, but besides that,
that one time, you know.
Hey guys, I'm on an 8+. Like this thing is just rocking. Like I paid it off. You know, I did the 2 year because it's interest free. Why wouldn't you, right? And I paid it off last year at this time, and I'm just gonna hold on to this thing until it dies because it's so far battery's been great. Like I think the battery gate thing is over, just to be honest. I think they've, you know, they got their hand slapped for that, and I don't think they're doing it anymore. We had the 6s, and we did get the class action lawsuit paperwork where you can get, I think, $50 if you had an iPhone 6. Apple will pay you back $50 for their battery gate thing that they had on there. But yeah, I have an 8+. Ryan, what are you using for a phone?
I have the Pixel 4 XL.
And how long have you had that?
I got it last fall, like right when it came out. Before that, though, I was on the first gen Pixel XL. So I had it for about 3 years and then moved over to
my kids are, this is the weird part. My whole family's Android and I'm the iPhone guy. And it's just so bizarre. But I too, I think I'm just going to wait until it dies. And then I'll pick up whatever the latest generation iPhone is at that point, whatever the right price point is. But geez, I remember we used to be able to get cell phones for $200.
Yeah, that's when I did this upgrade. I think it was when they, you know, this is the upgraded one with more storage. So I think this costs more than a graphics card. I think it's $1,300 when I got it. So that's a lot of money for a phone, considering, like you said, you used to every couple of years, just $200, and you know. Yeah,
no, it seemed like that was a no-brainer. They subsidized them. I'm not sure they were as expensive to make in those days. Yeah. So I don't think we're getting over that much. I mean, remember those phones? You could literally run them over and then you're like, oh, it's okay. It still works. You know, now you breathe on it the wrong way and the screen, cracks. Yeah. So although that's gotten a lot better too. Mike, any gadgets you're, we know you had a ham radio, but besides that one, any gadgets you're looking forward to as we come up to Christmas?
Yeah, they're all ham radio related now. I took my General and passed it, so I have a whole new slew of bands I can operate on, and that's all HF. And so my whole Christmas list now is antenna stuff and antenna analyzers and soldering kits and all that nerdy fun ham radio
ham
stuff.
Nerd
ham
You're
nerd
into a ham nerd.
I am, and I love it.
Oh my god. So next week Dave McCabe's coming on to talk about, we're going to do some lawn nerd stuff. So if you're thinking about that, we'll be talking about kind of fall prep to get your lawn ready for the winter. And then the week after that, we're going to catch up with Mike in this ham addiction that he has gotten into. And so if you want to hear how far down the rabbit hole, which I think
we're going to do some ham on the show. We're going to do some digital modes. We're going to do some screen capture while we do some digital modes. We'll show you guys around.
Bob, Ryan, thanks for taking some time tonight to hang out with us. Again, if you want to get all things Think Computers, I said that right? Think Computers?
Yes.
Am I getting that right? Okay. ThinkComputers.org. As soon as I said that, I thought that doesn't sound right, but want to make sure we're getting that. ThinkComputers.org. You guys podcast Wednesdays. Is it the same time? And they can follow you on YouTube just like they do here to be able to get that notification. What time is that? What time do you guys do that on Wednesday?
That is
7:30 Central.
Yeah, 7:30 Central.
Okay. Right on, or is there like a
usually
pre-show
right
on
goof
around like we do? Or
no, we don't do any pre.
We should probably do a pre-show now. I think about
right off.
Yeah, he's always like, "All right, you can do the intro today."
Yeah,
he pulled that one on me yesterday.
Yeah, I like a little pre-show. Mike and I were talking in our pre-show before you guys joined I'm just kind of getting prepped. And I said, it's just kind of fun to goof around. Oh, Mike's got that camera that
he didn't press his focuser.
So he disappeared once already, and I removed him here. I can do I can pull him out. Sorry, Uyghur, you're out. One mistake, and you're out. We'll pull him back.
Apparently, 30 minutes went by faster than I thought. You're right. I had not hit my focus remote in the last 30 minutes.
No, right on. But gentlemen, thanks for coming on tonight. Thanks for the info and doing it. Thanks for being great partners in what we do. You guys.
Absolutely.
You kind of have joined the community, and we share a lot of the same listeners. I would encourage, if you're a Home Gadget Geeks listener, you should definitely be subscribed or listening to YouTube, their podcast as well. And it's available. There'll be a link in the show notes if you want to be able to do that. And you guys are just really great at kind of what I like, which is kind of the realistic reviews. Like, not the, I watched some of these reviews and it's just kind of like, yeah, nobody's ever going to do that. Like, why would you? And you guys kind of bring it to more of the average guy. And I don't know who has an average guy site, but if somebody had an average guy site, they would probably fit in what you guys are doing pretty well. So I appreciate your guys' work. Hang tight for me. Let me close this up and then we'll do a little post show. Just a couple quick reminders. One, big thanks to Christian and all that he does over there at Maple Grove Partners and keeping our site up. He just installed some redundancy. So now if you host on Maple Grove Partners, it's not single site. He's got some failover. Christian's doing it right. So if you need hosting for anything, he'll basically build a custom plan for you. Mike,
his customer support is like lickety split, especially with ADD people like me. I switched my site over. I had the ham radio site. I switched it over to something that I never ended up using. I sent him a message like 2 weeks ago. I was like, hey, do you have a backup of what I did like a year ago? Can we go back to the ham radio site? Within a few hours, he messaged me back. Hey, yeah, you're back up and running.
Yeah.
Back to the old URL. You had to switch the URL, had a backup from a year ago. That guy is amazing.
He's a
rock
freaking
solid.
Genius. He's just a genius.
He
so
is.
Plans start as little as $10 a month for full hosting, and he'll just do anything you want. Just tell him you listen to Home Gadget Geeks. He'll do
Tell him Jim sent you.
That's it. MapleGrovePartners.com, and Christian will get you set up there as well. Don't forget, you can send us an email, and I always appreciate hearing from you guys. So Jim@theaverageguy.tv. If you just want to say, hey, I appreciated this, and there's a few of you every week who send me a note, and I always appreciate that. It's nice to kind of get some feedback on what you liked and what you didn't. Of course, this show, you're going to like 100% of it. So I just start sending your emails now. Jim loved every part of it. Jim@theaverageguy.tv. And then don't forget, if you want to download the app, homegadgetgeeks.com, and you can have that on your phone on both Android. So Ryan, you could have it, or us iPhone users could have it because it's free on both platforms. Homegadgetgeeks.com. Download it today. We'll do some post show. Thanks for coming out. For those that joined us live, we'll do a little bit of post show. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody. Gentlemen, great work. Thank you for coming out tonight and for doing it. How different is it for you guys to come on, like when you come on here and you don't have to do it? You don't have to.
I'm like relaxed. I'm so relaxed.
See, I feel more pressure here.
Oh. Do you really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, than ours. Wow. Well, and I think that was because the camera issue that I had. I think I would have felt more.
Either way.
I did, because I had it like laid out. I had the camera was focused, and then it just blew up. So I was like, I hated doing this. I always hate that. No worries. But I think it was fine.
Ryan, yeah, we'll get you back when.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. I'm always quarterbacking our podcast. So like when, I have to make sure I'm on my toes, because after Ryan's done talking, I'm like, oh yeah, I have to keep on, keep it going. So.
Yeah, it's always it's always great having podcasters on the show. And we're almost down to only other people who podcast, because it's just so easy. They know what to do. They know how it works. They know the technology. They usually have great sound, right? Good sound, good cameras. So that makes it a ton easier. But I know, like, when I show up on somebody else's podcast, it's a completely different experience than when you're the host. Mm-hmm. And it's just kind of nice. Like,
I think it helps that I've listened for so long to know how this show flows, right? And how that works. Because if I were to go on somebody else's show that I've never listened to, or only a couple, they may have inside jokes that you're just not picking up on, or just the cadence, however that is. So I mean, that helps a ton.
No, and it helps, like, when we have a lot of the guests now are listeners as well, or they've been on enough, that they kind of understand the cadence we're going to go through, and just it's not a big deal. You know, we're not trying to kill things here. We're just trying to have a conversation. But it's interesting, you know, I get the feedback I get. Sometimes I do a show and I think, that was okay. And then I get emails like, that was the greatest thing ever. And you're like, really? Yeah. Like, and then there's shows I'm thinking, oh man, that thing killed it. And I'll ask, I'll hear nothing. And I'm like, hey, like, how did you like the show? You know, I'll ping a few people on social, like, it was okay. You know, and you're like, it's just so hard to tell what people like. Yeah. Do you guys get much feedback in your live show? Do you guys get much feedback like we do in our chat room?
We have like
some regulars.
Three or four people who are in there. Yeah. You know, and they just it seems like they just enjoy talking with us as we're doing the podcast live, which is really nice.
Yeah. Some of them may be the same that are in here. I think.
Yeah, so it's nice having like that live, because when we first started doing the live stream, we didn't have any of that, so it's just like Brian and I talking to each other. But it's nice having those people in there.
A live audience is really, really nice to have. I mean, they just kind of add they kind of add to that. So
they were quiet tonight, though.
Well, it didn't take long. I was wondering at some point when someone would bring up the meetup. And so Joe's asking, when's the virtual meetup? I need to get my smoker cam set up. So that's a meat smoker, not a cigar smoker. But
and is it a meetup or is it a meetup? ET or AT? Because I thought he was referring to a meetup and then having a smoker, like virtual MEAUP.
Yeah, I'm thinking. So the current thought on this is that we'll kind of specialize first. So like Mike, like you're saying, we would have a meetup, MEAT meetup. The whole thing would be, we'd start in the morning, everybody get together and talk about what they're going to grill or smoke that day. And then you have to have a camera ready out there on your smoker. And through the day, then we'll broadcast all that stuff. Then through the day, we'll join back at certain times, talk about how things are going. You open the lid, those kinds of things.
That's cool.
Yeah, no, I thought that'd be kind of fun. I don't know if anybody's ever done anything like that.
I don't think, but
no, have you ever heard of no? And so, you know, the community, again, it fits well. We talk about grilling and smoking twice a year when Mark comes on. Be kind of fun. The other thing I'm going to try in a one-off is a beer tasting, where we're going to try and get everybody together, and you got to get local beers that are close. So I'll make some recommendations. Like, we're going to try this kind of beer and this kind of beer and this kind of beer. And we want to try and get, this is going to be the hard part. We want to try and get these brands, but if you can't get these brands, get this brand or get something that's close. And then the same kind of thing will come together in a big call and go around, try them. A buddy of mine's got a beer tasting, like an agenda, things that you talk about, the things you talk about, the tastes in it and those kinds of things. And just give it a try. Like, you know, let's just see how it goes. I tell you what, another fun one would do is like a whiskey or a bourbon tasting that way, where you get a chance to, that gets a little expensive because then everybody's got to have, you know, those, it's not like beer where you're going and buying singles, you know? So that would be fun. I've actually done a bunch of cigar meetups during this time with both coworkers and friends, where we just got on Zoom and smoked a cigar together. And so you chat, I put a headset on, move the mic down, enjoy a cigar and chat on Zoom. And it's actually pretty great. So
yeah,
go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, last Thursday we did our first we had a game night thing at work before COVID hit that we had started. We did our first virtual one last week, and it had some hiccups, but it wasn't bad, you know, across WebEx. And
did you guys, what was the game? What did you?
So there were two groups, and I would probably do it a little different, but I'm a gamer and I'm already in all these other, you know, I'm a Discord user and Steam and all of that. But so we had one group that was, they would communicate and have video chat via WebEx, and then they were playing Jackbox games. So the host was sharing their screen and you could hear it in WebEx, and then everybody played and participated on their phone. So that worked out really well for them. It was really cool. Yeah. And then we just really used WebEx as a communication tool as opposed to a Discord room or something else. And we all hopped into Fortnite and played for a couple hours.
Right.
Just people you wouldn't normally play with, maybe outside of that work area.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good way to, I'm thinking early in the morning. You dry rub the meat, get that all set up, right? Get all that set out, put them on, and then you have to have some kind of webcam, like external on the smoker, and then we just broadcast that throughout the day. And there'd be these times to
get your Twitch stream up of
something
live cam, right?
Are you guys on Twitch?
Live YouTube?
Yeah, we do all of our gaming on Twitch.
Yeah. So you guys do your show and then you game afterwards, right? Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
About an hour podcast and then 3 hours of gaming usually.
Really? Oh, I'm not gonna ever feel bad about keeping you guys late for a little post.
No,
because that must go to midnight for you guys then. And
like Bob, 8:30 to 11:30 or
sometimes 1 o'clock for me.
I didn't go to bed till 1 last night.
Yeah, Bob, you admitted you're a go to bed early guy. So
yeah, that's my late night. So typically I either Wednesday morning I'll sleep in or I'll take an afternoon nap so that I can get do the podcast and have some fun gaming.
Yeah, Wednesday nights usually I come down to the computer way late at night. It's the only time I can get down on Wednesdays. And sometimes I'm like, wow, they are still streaming, and I'll jump into their stream. I'm catching like the last hour of it because I'm like, man, these guys go a long time.
Yeah. I've never got into the watching of the gaming. That's just like I can do about 10 minutes and then I'm kind of.
I used to say the same thing, and I don't know, something just flipped, and I was like, oh, I could watch some of these people play.
Yeah, I have a stream on all day. Well, just to have something on. It's like having the TV on. Like I can't do that.
I can't do that. I've tried having YouTube on, just like various channels.
I can't do YouTube. But like watching game is just like it's you don't need to be paying attention. You don't miss anything, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just like you can just turn over and watch it once in a while. It's noise. It's a conversation going on over there. Like the entertainers just talking about stuff the whole time. Yeah. And if they're good at it, like Tim the Tap Man, or if they're experienced and they're good at entertaining an audience with their voice, you almost need to watch the video if you're, just having it on for background noise.
Listening. Yeah. I go back and forth where I may be working. The work computer is here, and then the studio stuff is here. And I swap back and forth between them. I'll use this one for work. Like if I'm going to go on a big meeting, I'm going to have this view as opposed to this view. This goes into the basement and it's not the best view. So, I'm bringing people in this way. But there's some work I'm doing where I just get like in the middle of it. I'm like, okay, I need quiet. Like, so just pause everything, not even music, because I need to kind of think through it. So I kind of go back and forth.
I love using this setup for WebEx meetings at work. Everybody's like, what the heck are you connecting on? Like, this is not the integrated webcam. And why do you sound so good? And why are there lights everywhere?
Yeah, well, they know I'm the podcaster. And so now they come in and they're like, oh, you're at the home, you're your home studio. Or they'll say, oh, you're at the work studio, And it's like, guys, it's like, and then, you turn the camera and you're like, it's just a room. Oh, okay. So but it's amazing. Ryan, has the folks at your work, like we're kind of like, my sound hasn't changed during the pandemic, right? I'm the same exact sound. I haven't upgraded anything. I changed from a ATR 2100 to a Samsung Q2U. Just I wanted to try it out. It's got a little bit more on the low end. But have you noticed, have your coworkers gotten any better? Like, have they upped their game on sound?
I know that they have, because I've been, helping deploy all those microphones, right? The headsets, because, people would connect. They'll either connect on their phone because they just didn't want to deal with, installing the app on their PC or whatever the case may be, or they would just use the dedicated microphone that's in the screen, and that's just horrible. So, we've been getting headsets and everything out. We've gone through, I don't know how many 100 headsets we've deployed for people that normally, were sitting at a desk making a phone call and had no need for a computer headset. We've got them everywhere. So yeah, which improves things a ton.
So it's getting a little bit better. Bob, are you in a spot? Are you in a spot where you do a lot of calls during the day? Are you doing that kind of stuff?
No. I mean,
he's in that spot right there.
Yeah,
I'm in this spot, which is my living room, surprisingly. Okay. But no, I mean, so a lot of companies would have meetings for new products, and they've just been doing online stuff, which is better because you can just sit there. You don't have to. Yeah. If you're not interested, you can just sit there. They don't, But yeah, no, I'm pretty much sitting here.
Are the vendors upping their game at all? Have you noticed? Are they getting any better in their presentations, or is it still just?
What's the one thing that I feel is that they are doing, because CES in January is canceled. All that budget is going towards sampling, so we're getting things that I didn't think we would get.
Hey,
which is nice.
These things. No, I'm just kidding.
What do you mean? You're getting a whole water-cooled thing.
No, I know. Yeah, that's a
big
cost.
But yeah, that's the big thing I noticed. There's a couple things coming up that companies are they're actually focusing on putting out products for people that are working from home. And it's interesting because some of my friends say that they're not going back to work like ever again. Like they're just going to work from home. That's the company's kind of mandate, just to work from home. If you can work from home, work from home. So you'll see a lot of gamer companies kind of come out with products that are specifically made for people who are teleconferencing and things like that, because it's probably a bigger market than even gaming, I would say.
Yeah, it's been a silent market that it's been steady, but now everything's sold out. And so I think they're going to backfill, and they're kind of racing with some new technologies. Mike, I cut you off a second ago. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to ask Ryan what headsets they're deploying. I've been looking for a decent quality headset.
It's a super basic mono Logitech one-ear piece, right? Because they're just mostly using them for phone calls. So to make phone calls as opposed to people putting in earbuds or trying to use that integrated phone. So it's nothing like super fancy or anything.
Because I asked work and they're like, just request what you want. We're not sending them out to everyone, but just if you let us know generally what you want.
Standardization was my big push on all of this. Was I want to know, if we're giving these out to people, I want to know the model, right, that we're giving them, so that help desks troubleshooting is consistent. And that was kind of the main push for that.
Mike, these are, I think, the Jabra 40s. I think
Jabra 40.
I think it's a 40, and they're optimized. I think they make a version optimized for Cisco and one that's optimized for Microsoft, and these are the Microsoft version.
Oh yeah, okay, Jabra.
Yeah, and
Evolve 40.
Yep, and they've got it's the 2-ear piece. They have the one. It's got a puck in the middle. That's got your mute or the volume. But this is the key, because this is the plug that comes in from, and this doesn't have the microphone on it. Most laptops don't have that ability to do it, and it's not really digital, right? So you put it in the puck, and then that turns it into the USB.
Got it.
We had a lot of folks who took home this part and left this part at work, and so they'd get on the call, and I'd be like, hey, so they'd have the headset on, and I'd be like, how come you're not using your mic? Because I'm super snooty about this. Like, I make everybody switch over to a mic if they've got it, you need to be on it because you're making my ears bleed, right? And so I'm like, hey, how come you're not? And so they're like, and I'm like, okay, show me the end. I'd make them pull it out. Like, show me the end of your cable. And they would pull up that, this 8mm, whatever. This
right.
thing is.
Not the USB part.
I'm like, where's your puck? And they're like, oh, I left that at work. I need that. Of course you need that. Why do you think, they just thought, well, I guess, it'll work. It's funny how people don't think about that. But these have been, Mike, I've had this now, I don't know, a year or two, and super durable. I take it, I throw it in, it spins this way. It's got a little case that comes with, throw it in my bag, take it with me. Really good sound. Not this kind of sound, but pretty good sound. And they don't look, it's not a gaming headset. You're not wearing,
not lighting up or anything.
Yeah.
So for work, it's a little bit.
Well, I just don't want this, right? Like, this is intimidating to people. Yeah. And so I have it on Amazon, $100.
They were 79. So
wait, what's UC optimized? What's UC?
I think that's the Cisco
Unified Communications.
Yeah.
Skype optimized.
Skype optimized.
$104. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
There's a thing called a mod mic, which basically you can put it on I can put it on these. It's just you connect it, and it has its own cable that goes into your mic jack too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've heard really good things, because like if you want to use a big headset like that, like the one you have on, it could just it's like a suction cup, and it just goes there, and then it's just microphone.
Got it.
Yeah, I use an
Apple headset
right now. I love hearing the us come back. I love being able to hear you guys super clearly, and then hearing my own voice come back. And so that's why I route them through this way most of the time. And they've actually gotten really used to me being like everybody else has got a headset on and I got this, I'm in the studio. So much so that when my boss now knows when I'm not talking and when I want to say something, I go,
yep.
And he goes, "Oh, Jim," like that. They know if I'm bringing the mic over that I want to say something. So we figured it out.
My thing is levels. I get so used to having the Go XLR and like, oh, I just want to turn the chat like Teams down, but I want to keep this video up or I want to keep everything else. I'm like, I love this Go XLR has just been. Yeah. I want it everywhere. I want 5 of them. They're so expensive.
Enough to find one. I've been looking for one.
Yeah, you got to find one and then afford one.
Yeah, I got one right before they all went out of stock, and they are amazing. I just have the Mini, which is good enough for me. I don't need the sampling. I don't need the recording of samples and all that stuff or voice changer. So the Mini has been great.
You think all that
I could use one more slider. I think the bigger one has one more slider. I could use one more, but what?
You think all that stuff will come flying back, right? I mean,
so I was actually listening to the Elgato Twitch, or I was watching it yesterday. So they make, capture cards, but they also have like the mic I'm using, the Wave 3.
Yeah.
And it does some of that Go XLR stuff, but with software. And they were talking about, stuff coming back, what that looks like. And they're saying, fairly soon, their best recommendation on that kind of stuff is to set up those reminders. If it's showing up on Amazon, go ahead and like hit the add to cart or whatever, because as soon as Amazon has a shipment in, they go through all of those people that have it in their cart and they get it off to them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they know they're just like hammering at it, and they were like, please do not pay the over, the double or triple the cost of our products. They hate seeing that. They hate seeing people buy them at the normal cost and then go right to eBay and flip them.
Yeah. Just supply and demand. That's
that's what it is. Yeah.
It's just capitalism at its finest,
Yep.
I know they hate that, but that's where we're at. I'm just kind of wondering when the supply chain for those things will catch back up. It was a little bit, kind of reminds me when there was the crypto run on video cards.
Mm-hmm.
And then the both AMD and NVIDIA were afraid to fill the channel because they kept thinking like this Bitcoin stuff could go bust, and we don't want to overproduce, especially at that price point. We don't want to overproduce these things, flood the market, and then just the bottom fall out. So they held really, really close. Like, okay, we're going to keep supplies at a pretty unreasonable, on the side of availability, not being able to get it. And that pissed so many people off, and it was hard to get a video card for a long time. Now today, Bob, that's not the way it is today, right? I mean, you can get it. If I want to buy a video card, right, I can pretty much get one.
Well, I think now
prices are higher though.
Prices are really high on pretty much all PC stuff, just for the fact that
thanks, Obama.
Yeah.
Everybody's home and building stuff.
Yeah, everybody's home and building stuff. Yeah, we were looking the other night at graphics card prices, and they're over MSRP, which is pretty surprising. So
I was telling Bob I just bought a 4-wheeler for cheaper than a 2080 Ti.
Yeah,
no kidding.
Joe says he tried to get a C920 and it was back ordered until mid-December.
Yeah,
which
we've found them. I don't know where my office manager gets them, but we've been getting C920s in for people, and they're in a newer packaging, and they're, I believe, typically headed for the Asian market because they are like Logitech branding, but then Asian market, language and symbols and everything. But we've been getting them in real quick.
Oh, okay. Well, and the C922 was really the next version of that. So those had gone down to like $50.
Yeah,
the C920s, they were like $50 right before all this. Kind of right before. So I'm kind of wondering though. Think of Logitech. They're the number one webcam maker, right? They got to be.
Mm-hmm.
You got to kind of wonder, like, do they want to ramp up? Now, this is different than Bitcoin because I think we see a long-term people staying home long-term, but you got to think they're kind of thinking that way. Like, how much of this do we want to put in the channel, and then get if all of a sudden the demand drops?
I think the shift in just work in general, right? People saying, "Hey, I'm just going to work from home all the time if available." I think what I would like to see are combos, either whether it's Elgato or Logitech or whoever. So a light a camera and a microphone that don't cost an arm and a leg, but up your game so much if we're doing all these meetings, right? Or a headset with better quality. Just a bundle. I think would be nice.
No, I totally agree. Bob, do you have any lights there in your
Yeah, well, I have these are technically shop lights for a like a garage that I have on my ceiling with command strips. So I'll turn them off. You'll see the difference.
Yeah.
Alexa, turn off office lights. So that's
wow.
So that's no lights in the computer. And then Alexa, turn on office lights. So I use these because I do have I don't know if you can see or
your light's good.
Yeah.
Your light is good.
They're like $40 on Amazon for I think six of them. And they light up this room, which I need for product shots, for podcasts, for videos, for everything. It just makes it easier.
They're bright white. They're like the 5,000K or something.
5,500K. But if you go on Amazon, you can pick the temperature, which is nice.
Yeah. No, it works. That works for you. Like you're well lit. You can tell it's above lighting, but sometimes it gets too far back on people and then their face is dark.
Yeah.
You know, those can. Ryan, what are you using for lighting?
So these are the Elgato Key Light Airs. And the nice thing about them is they integrate with the Stream Deck, so I can just hit the button, do that. I can adjust temperature, brightness, all that.
Sorry, Jim.
Way to go, Bob.
As soon as he said that, I was like, oh,
hey, we started the show and my lights were off. And this is the fourth podcast I've done today. And all four of them, I forgot to turn my lights on before we got started. What am I, a rookie? So so tonight we get started and I was looking at it and the sun went down. So my computer screen turned kind of orange, it does that for you, right? The blue light thing. And I was like, why am I so dark? And I look up, the lights aren't on. So I was trying to figure out at one point, okay, how do I turn my lights on? Because they're same thing. They're Lady A enabled. I can say turn on my studio lights. No, these will pop on. But I wanted to do it because then she'll say, okay, when you're done, and I have that routed through my soundboard so you can hear. We used to do segments with Alexa. I had with Lady A. I ought to just remove her from the system so I can do these things. So I was going through my apps and I had to remember, okay, which light is this app in?
Yeah.
So you go to
do it through the Lady A app on your phone though.
That I could have. Yeah. No, that would have been smart. I didn't. I was looking for I think it's a TP-Link, and so there's a Casa app that has that in there. That
I do try to buy all the same smart home stuff. So most of my stuff is Casa. Just for the fact of it's just easier.
Yeah. But you're right. I didn't even think about that. I could have gone to the end. I'm so used to just speaking that I didn't even think about going to the app.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
So I turned it on.
I think it's weird when I went back to overhead, no podcasting lights. When usually I do no overhead, no room lights, and just podcast lights. It almost looks like I'm in a green screen. Like I look cut out compared to
I noticed you changed it. And I was like, oh,
isn't that weird? And if I go,
we just lost your audio, Mike.
He muted, so he didn't kick on.
Oh, okay. I got you. He's invoking the Lady A device.
Yeah. So then that is all the room lights go off, and I just have two box lights that I call my podcasting lights. But I think this one must be further away because this side of my face is dark. That's weird.
Yeah, I've got one kind of off. Oh, and this one's not actually faced the way it usually is. It's shining down on this table, but
yeah, well, it's just amazing what a little light could do. I think.
Oh, totally changes the mood too. Like before, I was all lit up weird. Now it's just like more of a, focus on the person.
Yeah. Well, during the day, it didn't make a difference. I have some windows down here, and so I was getting enough natural light during the day. I didn't even notice. But tonight I was looking pretty orange, and I was like, "What? Oh." And they're right here. They are literally right here. And I totally forgot. I was like, God, it's okay. In December we celebrate 10 years. I mean, I've only been podcasting for 12,
for 10 years. Yeah.
10 years.
I can't seem to get the friggin' lights to come on when I'm doing the show. Guys, if you're listening live, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming out. Jim says no saying the A word. Yeah, as a podcaster, you
that's why I'm muted.
Come out. No, nice job. If you came out live, thanks for joining us tonight. On Wednesday, head over and see these guys when you need something on Wednesday night to watch. So we'll see you guys next Thursday. McCabe is here. It's all lawns. It's fall lawn care. We'll see you guys next week.